boycotted by separatist movements, but it saw a high turnout. Elections in Indian Kashmir are seen as a defining moment for this disputed territory. Will these elections boost separatist support or strengthen Indian rule? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome. I'm Sohail Rahman. India is seeing a high voter turnout in its regional elections. Voting in 6 mostly central and western areas is taking place over 6 weeks. The poll is the first in a series of votes that could cause the government to call for an early general election. The Congress party is currently in power, and if it does well in these elections, it could build on the success and call early national polls in February. A bad result for the ruling party could mean the government will wait until May, which will coincide with the end of its 5-year term in Parliament. The main issues being fought over are the repercussions of the global financial crisis and security following a spate of bombings blamed mostly on Islamist militants. Well, polling stations have been busy despite the separatists' call for a boycott of the vote. This year has seen some of the most vehement anti-India protests in the Kashmir Valley since the separatist movement began in 1989. And in the run-up to these elections, Maoist rebels stole voting machines and abducted some poll workers in the central state of Chhattisgarh, and in Dantwadia, rebels set off at least 2 landmine blasts. But these threats haven't dissuaded voters, even in areas subjected to the most violence. 55% of those who registered turned out for the vote in the first round. The Kashmir conflict is potentially one of the most dangerous in the world because both India and Pakistan are nuclear powers. It's been an ongoing scenario ever since the two countries were founded in 1947 when the Indian subcontinent became independent from Britain. The ruler of Jammu and Kashmir, whose state was located between the two new countries, had to decide which one to join but couldn't make up his mind. He was a Hindu, the majority of his population Muslim. He eventually decided to accede to India in return for military aid and a promised referendum. That referendum never took place, and since then the territory has been the flashpoint for 2 of the 3 India-Pakistan wars, the first from 47 to 48 and the second in 1965. Well, add to this the many violent clashes between the Indian army and Pakistan-backed groups. Well, traditionally, many Kashmiris felt Pakistan was their natural supporter because they shared the same religion. But it doesn't mean they want to join Pakistan. Since the late 80s, more and more Kashmiris favour an independent state of Kashmir, an option that both India and Pakistan reject. Lots to take in there, lots to discuss, because today's Kashmir is divided into 2 major parts. In between is the so-called line of control, which in most parts follows the ceasefire line of the First Kashmir War. The south is administered by India and the northwest by Pakistan. However, there's a third part few people know about. It's called the Aksai Chin region in eastern Kashmir, controlled by China, which makes it a disputed territory between the Indians and the Chinese. Well, joining me to discuss these issues are our guests in Islamabad, Raja Assad Hameed, a special correspondent for The Nation newspaper, a Pakistani daily. In Delhi, author and academic Prem Shankar Jha. And in Birmingham, Victoria Schofield, an author and expert on Kashmir. Victoria, could I come to you first? We've seen elections come and go in that area. Why is this one so perhaps particularly important at this moment in time for Delhi?
Well, I think obviously it's very important for Delhi to show the world and indeed show the country that elections are being held in Kashmir. As we know, previously elections were not able to be held during the height of the insurgency, and you've had now a fairly peaceful 6-year period since the previous elections in 2002. And this is obviously what the government in New Delhi wants. It wants to be able to hold elections and feel that the political parties can participate, and possibly we'll see a change of government in Kashmir, possibly. I think it's actually unlikely that the PDP Congress coalition will get re-elected. Obviously, Omar Abdullah of the National Conference is hoping he's going to get elected. But it's just the sort of political activity which the government in New Delhi wants to see, rather than, for example, a ban.
Prem Shankar Jha in Delhi, do you think that these elections differ from the elections we saw in 2002, which were disputed as to whether they were free and fair?
The 2002 elections are no longer seriously disputed for either fairness or fairness. There were a number of anxieties about it at the time when they were held, but they died away as time went by. There are various ways in which you can put a little bit of pressure, encourage some people, discourage some groups, and that has been done this time also. But in terms of the actual voting, I don't think there's a problem there. I think that the election is not, surprisingly, there are only 3 constituencies from the valley so far that have voted out of whatever it is, 30 odd. But the thing is that the results of these 3 are surprisingly similar to 2002 in the sense of overall vote. The overall vote is about 55%. It's probably 3 or 4% higher this time than it was in 2002,
well,
which is not a significant difference.
Yeah, those statistics are coming obviously from the Indian authorities at the moment, and of course as the weeks progress.
It's from the election committee. That's from the election commission, but it's not final.
No, of course, and the voting still has to progress over 6 weeks. But as India continually espouses itself as being the largest democracy, is there not sort of pause for thought here when you have some political leaders under house arrest, and therefore the accusation that these elections cannot be free and fair if political leaders of parties can't actually campaign for the issues that matter to them?
Well, behind this act, which I think is absolutely and completely self-defeating, lies a certain theory about Kashmir. The theory is that the Hurriyat, the separatists, are really a spent force, that they are small men in big chairs, that they have in fact taken money from everybody, they're corrupt, the Kashmiris know it, and therefore they don't have any real hold on the population. And the attempt systematically over the last 4 years of a small clique in the Home Ministry and in the Prime Minister's office to try and sideline Hurriyat, simply by essentially just pushing what they call the mainstream parties, the parties that are prepared to work under the rather flawed application of the Indian Constitution to Kashmir, and to push the Hurriyat aside. Now, what the election has shown is that's not possible. I mean, it's only 3 constituencies, but that is quite clear.
Let me just bring in Raja Assad Hameed in Islamabad. We will talk about the long-term politics between India and Pakistan in a short while. But from your point of view and from where you're writing your articles about these elections in Kashmir, are these small men in big chairs, as Prem Shankar Jha says?
I did not say that.
Not at all. I don't agree to the philosophy. This is his own views. To me, they are the considerable voice of the Kashmiri freedom struggle, which is indigenous, and yet it has shown that it is peaceful, neither it is hostile and nor violent, because the whole process has gone rather relatively peacefully. And you have to understand what were the circumstances when these elections took place the other day. Some 30 mainstream leaders of the Kashmiri nation were either behind the bars or they were under house arrest. And it was not the election in the whole of Kashmir, rather it was in the election only in 10 constituencies out of the 87. And remember, there are more than 500,000 Indian occupying troops in the valley, which were dictating the terms, and not a bird was even allowed to flitter against the will of the state authorities. So these were the circumstances when the elections have took place. And in the state elections, you understand that the parties who have really come up as the true representative of the Kashmiris were staging a boycott of these elections.
OK, let me just bring in Prem Shankar there. Sorry, I may have just misquoted you there, but there is this dispute about the role of the Hurriyat, the separatist leaders who have certainly a very important position within the politics of Kashmir, and surely they should be brought into votes like this. They should be heard, certainly by Delhi, if that's the case, and they are, or have been in the past.
Well, the Hurriyats have been asked over and over and over again to participate in these elections as well as in the 2002 elections. In the 2002 elections, when they were trying to make up their mind and they were on the point of saying they would take part, of course they were prepared, they had to discuss they wanted various changes first. But before that could happen, their key leader, Abdul Ghani Lone, was assassinated, and he was assassinated according to his son at the instructions of Pakistan's ISI. So that put an end to that. This time there's been no such pressure from any side, not from Pakistan, not from the militants, and it's been Hurriyat itself that has decided that it will not fight. And the reason it has done that is because it says, look, we want to be a bridge between you and Pakistan. We have nearly achieved that situation. You have a broad framework agreement with Pakistan between Musharraf and Manmohan Singh of April 2005. And they were saying, and the position is somewhat hardened, but not significantly, that we want to work within this broad framework. All except one leader and the present coordination committee was saying this openly. And what then happened was that because of internal developments in Kashmir and particularly in Jammu, the people in Kashmir came up and they supported the Hurriyat, and they were so disenchanted with Delhi that Hurriyat got a lot of strength out of it. And they said, you must talk to us first, and that is not happening. Also, for that, they require a variety of preconditions to be fulfilled. They're also not fulfilled.
Victoria Schofield, can I bring you in here? As we've been watching the elections at the start of this 6-week period, certainly start in Kashmir, various quotes from civilians there who are voting are separating the issue of separatism and independence to good governance for Kashmir, making sure that they have the infrastructure and facilities to maintain a civilized form of life and existence within the area. Do you think that that particular train of thought is becoming more and more evident, and politicians will have to address that separatism and independence is one thing and having infrastructure, roads, schools, hospital and healthcare is another?
Well, I think this has actually been the trend. And if one takes the sort of 6-year period since the last elections, certainly which the Indian government has been trying to foster, and indeed many Kashmiris, they've said we've had enough of the insurgency, we've had enough of the situation, and we want good governance. It is a big issue whether you equate good governance with azadi, and certainly the hardline freedom fighters, the hardline members of the Hurriyat are not going to be bought off, so to speak, by promises of good governance. They want to go that step further in terms of having this referendum they've been asking for, and putting the independence option on the negotiating table, so to speak. But certainly I think amongst a number of Kashmiris, they feel that continuing to press for independence, so to speak, in other words, a change of status, is just never going to happen. And they're much better to be trying to have a dialogue with the government of India to demilitarize the state, which will certainly improve the quality of their lives, and indeed go for these infrastructure benefits, such as the hospitals, the good roads, and indeed good governance from their own politicians.
Well, we'll just take a quick pause there and we'll take a short break, because when we come back, we'll take a closer look at what Kashmir means for average Indians and Pakistanis. Do stay with us here on Inside Story.